Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Real Talk with ZSJ. I hope everybody's doing well tonight. So one of my favorite people is back. She's like
Everybody always likes it when we talk, Zakia.
she's like my favorite special guest, Alison McDowell is back, and as you all know, this it's always a fun time. It's always like a super like I nerd out like when I talk to Alison. Is like I learn new things and all of that. So I hope that you all are excited and ready for a good show. Make sure you guys share this. So this is going to be some good information tonight. So try to share this out with as many people as you can, so that people can come in and learn tonight. So Alison, actually, you need no introduction. People know you by now on this channel. But anything you wanna say to like Tia what we're going to talk about tonight?
Yeah, well, so for I don't know, people haven't seen the other pieces. I'm based in Philadelphia. I'm a parent. I'm an independent researcher, and my focus has really been around sort of these innovative financial instruments and surveillance technology. And many of these innovative financial markets that are based on social impact run on trauma and are sort of this extension of racial capitalism. So I'm really interested. We've talked about a number of things having to do with public education, which is an interest area that we share. And something came to light to me over this past week. Momnibus. It's sort of a word play on omnibus bill, but Momnibus that was focusing on health disparities for Black women, particularly, and things that sound really good. And I think this is backed by Cory in New Jersey. And I'm here to sort of peel it apart and say it's not actually what it looks like. Or there's some other layers that if you didn't know better, that could be ultimately pretty problematic. And this has to do with research that I had done around humanitarian aid and development aids and blockchain identity, actually. So we're going to sort of peel this back, unpack a little bit of how the data surveillance tied to ostensible sort of progressive legislation is unfolding. And just so people have a lens to look at things more critically, because I think for the most part, no one's going to come out. This is backed predominantly by Democratic, Congress people. They're not going to sort of tell you that this is about debt finance.
Yeah, that's I feel like this. I mean, I feel like when you first brought this idea to me, I was like, oh shit, this is probably some eugenic stuff and probably connected to like stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, let's get right into it.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard because I have to say, even in the education space, I've known a number of people who have had concerns around home visit legislation, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But now that essentially that the healthcare and the social welfare, sector has been sort of queued up with all sorts of data collecting devices that feed these data analytics and predictive profiling programs. Not that the people who are implementing them necessarily are in any way intentionally nefarious, but they're operating sort of as extensions of the state and coming into people's homes and collecting very personal information about people and their families, especially in the times where people are very economically precarious. And we've seen a lot of really intrusive. That the hand of the state is increasingly intrusive in people's business, that it's worth sort of surfacing this. And it's interesting to me because actually a lot of people who were sort of sounding the alarm on both home visits and pre-K legislation were conservative women for the most part. And in some of these Democratic states were the ones that were putting the brakes, saying like, maybe we don't need to get into people's homes, the day after they bring their baby home, or maybe collecting all this data is not the best thing. And so it's kind of an interesting. It was surprising to me initially, but now it makes a little bit more sense once you understand it as a financial market. So let's see. So okay. So this is. Let me. Oh, you know what? Maybe I need to be clicked over in this. Did that move it?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So this is this Momnibus bill. The focus is on Black maternal health issues. So it's a whole package of a number of different bills, and not strictly just pregnant women who are Black, but also Indigenous women as well, and Hispanic. So Black and brown women. And this is not, I just want to say up front that clearly there are health disparities. And I am in no way minimizing the fact that Black and brown mothers are treated differently by the health system and have bad outcomes. So I just want to get that clear. I'm not trying to diminish the nature of the issue. My focus is going to be the way in which this issue is being leveraged into sort of these global financial markets and the surveillance state. And so it sounds really good. They're talking about providing postpartum Medicaid coverage for at least a year for women. And again, Medicaid, that sounds great. Like, clearly we want people to have quality healthcare that is in alignment with their health choices. But increasingly, the healthcare system is being realigned to something called this value-based payment system and big data analytics that may lead to something that on a dashboard looks like a better health outcome, but in reality is imposing a lot more digital control mechanisms on Black and brown women and their families. Yeah. So these are a couple of the elements that were in the Momnibus bills that jumped out at me, knowing about the data analytics and the human capital finance piece. So they're talking about data to save moms. And Zakiya, you and I, we've talked a number of times about, like, do we really believe that the issues of these disparities and the bad outcomes will be solved simply with more data? No, because I think everyone at this point knows the problem, right?
Right, exactly.
So the problem exists. They're talking about that they want more data and more metrics. They're also talking about innovative models. So innovation is usually a sort of a red flag. You could substitute experimental or disruptive, but the innovative usually sort of indicates that the Silicon Valley is in there and they're looking to sort of impose their solutions. They're looking at integrated telehealth models, okay? So again, if you are really caring about women from a holistic, human-based point of view, your first thing that you would be teeing up would probably not be integrated telehealth. To me, integrated telehealth means we're trying to actually minimize and cheap out on the amount that we're paying quality medical professionals and instead substitute online platforms and apps. Section 803 talks about grants to promote equity. And again, I sort of always put that in air quotes because this is dashboard level equity in maternal health outcomes by increasing access to digital tools. Okay. So these tools, again, are data collection devices connected to this Internet of Bodies, which we've talked about before. Right. Then it talks about impact. So we know that impact is sort of code word for these social impact investment markets. Impact means we're taking data that indicates a bad outcome and we're tweaking it so that the numbers shift and on the surface it looks like a better outcome. And as part of this impact, they're looking at alternative payment model demonstrations. So I believe that what that is about shifting from a fee-for-service model, which has its own issues in terms of potentially over-prescribing care that's not necessarily desirable. But the flip side that they're going to be introducing is something called a value-based payment system, especially for Medicaid and Medicare, that will be, they will assign what the outcomes are that they want, and then they will sort of coerce data analytics to get those outcomes. So for me, just to sort of go back there, we're talking about more data, more innovation, telehealth, digital tools, and alternative payments, which all seem rather problematic at first glance, knowing what I know about how things are playing out in the humanitarian aid, the global aid system around maternal health. Do you have thoughts on that, Zakiya? Do you have any feedback or impressions?
No, not right now. I mean, I feel like tech, from what I know right now, tech is merging with literally everything.
Yeah. And AI.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and it's interesting because I've even seen some things today that people tag me on social media that they're saying, Like there's not even going to be hospitals anymore. Like somehow they're going to like set us all up with nano pills and like, digital, I don't even know. Like, I'm not really sure how you get rid of a hospital. Like we're not really to the point of like having robot surgery in our living room. So I'm not sure where this is all going, but yeah, on the one hand, they're sort of implying that they want to provide additional care. But on the other hand, what they're really saying is that they're using Black and brown women again in this sort of experimental phase, right? As they are rolling out telehealth, they're like, oh, well, who should we try it out on first? Why don't we try it out on communities that have already suffered a lot?
Right.
So this is an article from 2018. And I wrote up a blog post on this at the time when I was first looking into digital identity. And I've spoken with people, I've sort of been in the doghouse a bit with the blockchain folks, but I understand blockchain is much more than the cryptocurrency and more ledger structure, right? That's tied to your digital identity and ultimately your digital twin. So in this case, the first blockchain baby was born in Tanzania. And so they actually set up the mother, the expectant mother, with a unique identifier, a digital identity. The unborn child was given a digital identity on blockchain, all of them, and then the facility. And then her compliance with the prenatal health care was tracked during her pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And later in the article, they actually talk about incentivizing proper sort of patient compliance, right? And again, we do want women to have access to quality health care. On the other hand, we know that in some ways, if this system has already been structured to have bad outcomes for Black and brown women, then why would complying with that existing structure necessarily yield a better outcome? And in global aid, many of there's a very heavy hand in like Johnson & Johnson and the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation. Some of the big pharmaceutical companies are over there. So the question then becomes, are the women who are accessing the healthcare system, do they have options of choice in terms of the care they get? And some people would prefer maybe a more mainstream model, and some women would prefer more a holistic or an alternative model, right? But if they're put on blockchain, and if a global aid system is saying, this is the way, in order for you to be identified as a compliant, good parent, someone who is not going to be at risk of having your family broken up, you need to comply with our steps.
Wow.
And that's on blockchain, then that becomes tricky. And part of what we talked about a number of times is gamification, that this stuff is all being gamified. So in this, they're actually gamifying the pregnancy healthcare process by saying that you would earn tokens, almost like, when you go to CVS or something and you get points, for buying certain items. And then,
oh my God, yes.
It's like loyalty points, right? So you've got a loyalty point with your healthcare provider, and they're saying, so they log the information on blockchain that enables healthcare providers to incentivize healthy, proactive pregnancy behavior. For instance, if a patient shows up for all of her appointments, she may receive a digital asset representing an umbrella, which she can present at a shop to receive an umbrella.
Wow.
Which is a really bizarre thing to say, but essentially what they're saying is we don't trust that parents are accessing the healthcare system simply because they want a healthy pregnancy and because they want healthy children, but that somehow, they're going to be non-compliant, and you're going to get them to be compliant by like giving them this script. And not even knowing that they want an umbrella, right? But it's gamifying this thing. And so I think the first thing when I saw this Momnibus bill, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what it's about. It's about tracking compliance against expected, as what did they say, proactive pregnancy behavior. Again, they are putting this on the woman. The responsibility is on the woman. It's not on the healthcare system per se. It's not identifying that perhaps the bad health outcomes are the result of the healthcare system failing women. Somehow this positioning is that the women are being inadequate, right? They're not doing the right thing. And if we just tracked them more, then they would do the right thing.
Yeah. Wow.
Does that make sense?
It in a weird way. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying any of it's legitimate, but that's their headspace, right? Like this is the headspace. It's a colonial project, right? It's It's a patriarchal project. It's coming in and it's saying, we know how to do this. You do it, and we put you on blockchain, and we're going to track it. So then the other piece, and I've talked about this in some other talks that I've given, but is about social impact bonds and social determinants of health. The public health, I mean, honestly, if you look back to the origins of the public health system in the Rockefeller Foundation and Johns Hopkins, it's been messed up since the beginning, really, this process. But now they're actually melding the potential harms of institutionalized public health with the finance industry. So they're saying that we don't have money to take care of, to provide appropriate health care to women and their babies, but we will recreate that lack as an investment market. Okay. And so they're actually looking at this in 20 countries. So this is a global process. And this is from the American.
Can I ask how many countries in Africa?
In 28
countries? How many countries, when you say this, would you say 50 countries?
Well, this says 20 on this article.
Oh,
I'm not 100% sure which 20 those are. But this mindset that you are going to use, create investment opportunities in healthcare deficits, especially among vulnerable populations, is pervasive.
Yeah.
Okay. And especially things like diabetes, which often can present with pregnancy. Like diabetes, asthma, many of these things that are specific concerns to the Black community are melded into the social impact finance space.
Wow.
So this is from the United Nations, and it's interesting. I just threw this on right before I got in, but someone had a tweet that I got tagged in, and it said, "I'm in a meeting right now, and a representative of the UN's population agency said that the UN's goal is universal access to sexual and reproductive health and rights, and the right of health in nationwide strategies by 2030. What does this mean?" Okay, so this is rolling out globally. Like this tweet was today. And so global health is goal number 3, sustainable development goal number 3. And you can see the image on the side of the screen with the rainbow circle, is that this is from the ITU, which is like the telecommunications arm of the UN. Mm-hmm. And they're saying that like, this phone is going to take care of the baby.
Wow.
Right? Like Naki's mobile phone is her best babysitter.
Wow.
Now, the other thing about that phone, and that's not said here, but in many instances, that phone is also going to be her access to maybe food assistance or other benefits, right? So it's synced. Yeah. Your access to currency systems or benefit systems is going to be linked with how you are behaving on this phone as an app. And then that is your minder, that is your tracker in the system.
Wow.
So, it's ICT is individual communication technology. So that's phones and tablets and wearable tech, and that they have the potential of delivering benefits across the global healthcare ecosystem, right? Wow. So that's the telehealth. This is not just happening in the global aid system. This is the Momnibus bill. If this advances, it's built within this overall context. So these are a couple of, this is from Little Sis, that were involved in the Tanzania blockchain project. So Aid Tech, Care Pay, and this task force on healthcare. So there are connections between, again, aid, your access to financial support, and your behavioral compliance with the healthcare system. There's a lot of these behavior tracking apps for women. A lot of them are based in tech and in finance here in the US. There's this one, I don't even know how you pronounce it, JPAGO maybe. And it's an NGO connected specifically to Johns Hopkins, where they're doing text messaging called Hello Mama. And then this DNet, which is in Bangladesh, it's like a social aid enterprise. And so they're framing it as a maternal and child survival program, but really a lot of this is tied to data analytics and behavior tracking. If it wasn't about the financial thing, they would not need these phones to tell the women what to do. The women would just have access to health clinics in their community, right? They would be able to get an appointment and go see, a nurse practitioner or, obstetrician. They wouldn't have to go through an app. But that is the world that we're in now, that everything is going through the app. And again, there's this synchronicity between things being developed in the global north and then piloted in, Africa and India and the global south, and then being boomeranging back into, communities of interest, Black communities, low-income communities. Once they've got the technology refined, it comes back in.
Wow.
Okay, so here we have the Momnibus, like Cory Booker is spearheading this. I think he's actually introduced it several times. So, he's reintroducing it. There's like a big press push for it right now. So Cory Booker is, he's out of New Jersey. He was one of the people who introduced this social impact partnership legislation. So this was legislation that provided seed funding for pay for success finance. And I was actually I went to the Dirksen Senate building when they kicked this off. And so Senator Young, I believe Todd Young, he was involved in like behavioral economics. So this is behavioral economics tied to social impact legislation. So there's no way that this Momnibus bill is advancing without it being directly embedded in this larger social impact finance landscape. And then a lot of the seed funding for the CIPRA projects were tied to opportunity zones and promise zones. So 20% of the low-income census tracts across the country were identified as these opportunity zones. And essentially to pour, it's like a way of sheltering capital gains from these giant like global finance interests. Because if they put money into either real estate or businesses in these opportunity zones and hold it for 10 years, they pay no capital gains on their original investment. It's huge. So, I'm kind of wondering if some of the social impact finance is also going to be linked to developments in health clinics, right? Or some sort of development or surveillance. Like maybe in these promise zones, they'll start to put Wi-Fi signaling or, free community hubs for health or, I can certainly imagine, given Google and Sidewalk Labs and City Block's involvement in this space, that within the opportunity zones, there's going to have some sort of telehealth kiosks or something showing up.
Right. Wow.
I know. So again, contextual wise, what is, Booker is New Jersey. Well, what is New Jersey? Well, New Jersey is a lot of pharmaceuticals, right? Like if you're,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean it's the Princeton, Trenton area is all Johnson and Johnson,
right.
It's all big pharma, right? That's a core part of what New Jersey is about, is pharmaceutical. And in fact, when Phil Murphy, who's the former Goldman Sachs and the governor,
he's the governor,
he was setting up these career impact bonds. Like the 3 jobs they wanted to channel people into were coding, energy, and pharma. Right. So he's there to please the pharmaceutical interest. And then how does that play into, again, medicalizing, and again, not to say that women that there aren't complications with pregnancy, but if you can further medicalize a natural process and create revenue streams for these companies, that's going to advantage the people who are, the power players in New Jersey. Also, New Jersey is a major state for insurance and finance, especially northern New Jersey finance.
Yeah.
So it says the economic
to New York,
securities, commodities, and investment sectors. Like essentially what they were saying is the taxes, like the employment taxes paid by the finance sector is like the most tax money they get in New Jersey is out of the finance sector. So he's advancing Momnibus, but behind him, he's got big pharma on one side and the insurance industry on the other.
Wow.
So the other
tool
about book, is that, so he was part of, he had a close relationship with Mark Zuckerberg. They did a lot of, messing around in the Newark City, schools. But there is this role for Zuckerberg, who has been active in New Jersey as well and has these connections. So Mark Zuckerberg's wife, Priscilla Chan, her background is in medicine. So the Chan Zuckerberg initiative was always medicine and education. And it's interesting because I'm going to cross a little bit beyond strictly pregnancy into like early childhood, because I think they're interconnected.
It's connected, yes.
Like women who are like, you have multiple pregnancies, right? So you might have young kids and be pregnant. And so Priscilla Chan had this endeavor, this test bed school called the Primary School, which was a combination of education and wraparound and health services for low-income families. So I think that the primary school in the Bay Area was sort of a test bed for stuff that Chan Zuckerberg was working on as this larger model of, managing low-income families as data commodities under the guise of sort of a benevolent practice. But we also know that Chan Zuckerberg, on the flip side, is doing all sorts of really intensive stuff with synthetic biology, right? Biotech, synthetic biology, and so there's this biohub too. And once you start mixing up data analytics with genomics and eugenics, and what that means for turning communities into finance objects, it becomes really problematic. And I just wonder how close Booker still is with Chan Zuckerberg.
Yeah,
So, I will mention this as far as the data, because the game of human capital finance futures is all in the interoperable data system. And Chan Zuckerberg helped scale something called Data Zone, which is an interoperable data system that was piloted in San Jose in largely Latino schools there.
Wow.
And they scaled this up, and it included foster care data, pre-K data, mental health data, juvenile delinquency data, education data. It was this giant data cloud for, I think, setting up these impact markets. It was then pushed up into a larger entity called the Silicon Valley Regional Data Trust. And when that launched in 2017, Priscilla Chan gave the keynote. But at this keynote, they actually had a panel discussion. And let me see if I can find it. Let's see. Attendees heard a lively panel discussion with the Honorable Patrick Tondreau, presiding judge of the Santa Clara County Juvenile Justice Court. Okay, so that's the cost offset of prisons.
That's
UCS
justice,
genomic researcher David Hausler. He put the genomic sequence on the internet. And Juan Cruz, superintendent of the Franklin McKinney School District, on using comprehensive data to support outcomes. Okay. So we've got the juvenile delinquency, which is the cost offset for this human capital finance. But then we've got genomics in this mix, for goodness sake, right? So
that's scary.
It's pretty intense, right? Because it's all predictive profiling of people within the education system, but increasingly it's going to meld with the healthcare system, because the Silicon Valley Regional Data Trust, which was scaled with Chan Zuckerberg money, was the model for something called the National Interoperability Collaborative. And I would really encourage people, if you haven't heard of this, to spend some time on this website, because I felt that this was very problematic when I first found it in 2018. And it even has become more so, because whereas the Data Zone and Silicon Valley Regional Data Trust were primarily education data with a little mental health and juvenile delinquency data, the National Interoperability Collaborative, which came out of this Stewards of Change entity, is predominantly health data. And at the time, I couldn't understand why it pivoted, why it went from education data to healthcare data. But you can see Stewards of Change here. And so there are a number of entities that are involved in the National Interoperability Collaborative that are also part of this vaccine or this COVID credential program. So we've got Microsoft, we have IBM, and we have MITRE systems.
Wow.
Okay. Now I will say, and I didn't put an arrow on this one, but the Annie E. Casey Foundation is
I was just about to say, I see that.
So the Annie E. Casey Foundation, which is based in, it was originally most of their
they're in Baltimore.
They're in Baltimore. They started out in Seattle, actually. So it's built up from UPS money, right? So that's really interesting from the tracking and tracing standpoint that this is UPS, because they're really good at tracking packages. And I keep saying we're the next packages. And UPS started out, he was the kid was a courier in Seattle, and he had a single mom. And then when he made his big money founding UPS, he went into foster care. So his charitable giving was foster care. Foster youth went from Seattle to Connecticut down to Baltimore. But they're deeply into social services, and they're connected with Strive Together, which is that United Way collective impact human capital investing program. And actually, the Annie E. Casey Foundation was one of the very first entities to launch the idea of impact investing in 2002 with this Mission Investors Exchange.
Wow.
So, again, when we're talking about tracking maternal health outcomes with data analytics, I think it can't be separated from concerns especially of women who are economically vulnerable or in precarious situations, that the social welfare extension does not get inserted into that with some fear that they may not be able to keep their children. I think that's just a really real concern, just to be very frank about that, as we examine the data collection piece of this. And this is what I'm talking about. So these are
oh my God, that's where I live. You have Montgomery County, Maryland on here.
Yeah. So these are other partners in the National Interoperability Collaborative, right? And there's more than that. I could only fit this sort of on one screenshot, and that's why I encourage people to go look at this website. But guess what? In addition to public health systems, a number of them are also linked to like religious-based social services. You see Lutheran Services in America, which I think may also be in Baltimore. You've got the National Council on Crime and Delinquency, and you have the National Fusion Center Association.
National Fusion Center? What is that about?
Yes, that's Homeland Security.
Wow.
So when I saw this 2 years ago, I couldn't understand why did it go from education data to healthcare data? And I started to understand Philadelphia had a gathering, and I'm trying to remember, essentially it was a strange gathering around community development, and it was very, when you looked at the tweets and the stuff from the, it was almost like the banks were all coming around saying, we're really sorry for redlining. We feel really bad about it. We know it was really bad. Now we're going to do better. Look at all these programs we're planning. And part of it, and it had someone there talking about social impact bonds. So I knew it was not what it appeared on the surface. And I knew that they hadn't really changed their tune. They were just coming up with a new revenue stream. And at one point they talked about recreating communities with hospitals as the anchor. And I thought, well, I can think of a lot. I mean, I like, you want to have a good hospital, but why would that be your community anchor unless eventually you're going to turn everybody into a cyborg through gene therapy? But it was strange. And then now that I see the healthcare system blending with the biosecurity state, there, on the one hand, there is the cost offset of the prison complex and, child protective service or foster care for these social impact bonds. But on the other hand, now it seems very clear that if you're someone who's not holding the proper credential in your digital wallet to be medically compliant, potentially you become someone who's of interest to the National Fusion Center. I don't know how else to read this, but that's a real concern. And I would be open to hearing what other people think about that. This is another piece. So national interoperability came out of this Stewards of Change element. And it's strange. It's an odd website. It's kind of clunky, but to me, it almost seems really powerful. It seems not slick, but it seems intentionally not slick, if that makes sense to you, when you see who's connected to this website. And one of the people who's on the board is this person named Paul Wormelai, I don't know, and he's a tech consultant to the government. He was an advisor to the White House on security, and he worked with the Law Enforcement Assistance Administration. And I don't know if there's an interesting book by Elizabeth Hinton called From the War on Poverty to the War on Crime. And it was linking the social welfare state to the targeting of Black men for incarceration. It was saying this didn't happen in spite of the war on poverty. This was actually a direct result. And a big element of that narrative was around this LEAA, the Law Enforcement Assistance Administration. So the fact
now they're focusing on, instead of Black men, Black women.
Right. And so when this guy Wormelai was also the IJIS, which is judicial, policing, homeland security, data sharing, right? So this guy is pretty intense. And I'm not saying it's directly connected with the National Interoperability Collaborative, but I think that as we go forward, we need to understand health impact markets are connected to this. And then how does this interface with the larger data analytics, risk profiling, predictive profiling of the Black community, which is nothing new, but it's just this newest manifestation. Mm-hmm. So let me go forward. Okay. So I've talked before, I think, with you guys about this ALICE, which is
I've heard of that.
Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. So this is the working poor. This is the framework of the working poor. It was developed by the United Way, and specifically the United Way of Northern New Jersey. Okay. So and Booker is supportive of this program. So Northern New Jersey is also where a lot of the hedge fund managers are located. So they're located in Connecticut and they're located in Northern New Jersey. And so Stephanie Hoops was at an event. She worked for Rutgers University Newark and helped set up this data bank system. And she was attending this prosperity symposium in Philadelphia in 2019, which was essentially about like pathways out of poverty. Everything is a pathway. Only they're never intending you to actually get out of poverty, but it's this process of keeping you on the pathway. And that is what Alice is about. So if you understand, that this is coming out of Booker, then you have to understand clearly the Momnibus bill is not simply going to stop at the health outcomes. Once they get the women in the system, it's going to be about managing their trajectory, right? Especially if they end up needing assistance and there's like a welfare to work component and managing their children. It's going to move from the pregnancy behaviors into the next phase, which is how to manage the mom and how to manage the child. And that's something that's really specific to the N.E. Casey Foundation and also Aspen Institute. They talk often about this 2-generation model that they want because they're developing impact markets on both sides. They're improving the mother and they're improving the baby. And so both of those become opportunities to put their capital through. So there's Alison. They look so happy, right? They all look just so happy to be the people navigating grinding poverty, but there you go. So here is Stephanie Hoops. Again, this United Way, Northern New Jersey is specifically where it comes out of. And this is all about impact investing, right? And so, I'm based in Philadelphia. A lot of this was set up by the Rockefeller Foundation by Judith Rodin, who was the former president of Penn. So she left Penn. She went to the Rockefeller Foundation, where they created this global impact investing network. And this was all happening in the lead up to the last global economic crash around housing. So then the human capital futures market is the next round. They've been gearing up for this for a decade plus, and now the human capital futures are next. So this was 2007. That they created the Global Impact Investing Network. Now, this is interesting because this is the National Conference of State Legislatures, and this is talking about home visit legislation. So how are they going to track all this Momnibus stuff? Well, they will do it through Medicaid for the pregnancy behaviors, but as soon as the child is born, there are huge impact markets on early childhood, and the home visit element is a big piece of that. So it's really interesting to me, the timing of this. This is only a part of a screenshot. It has like many more states listed of legislation that has been enacted, but you see the start date. It's 2008.
2012. Oh,
well, it's 2000. It starts at 2008. So they set up the human capital markets in 2007. They crashed the global economy, and then the states start picking up and rolling out the home visit legislation the next year. Okay, so they need to get into people's homes. The technology is getting to the point with the cloud computing and small ICT devices that you can bring tablets, and the home-based home visit nurses and things are part of that. So let me see. Let me just keep going. Okay, so this is from a piece that I wrote because I think many people who are not familiar with impact investing are not grasping that they're not meant to solve the problem, right? And so this is just my quote, and I'm going to read it out loud. No investment market is designed to eliminate the source of its profit. We've seen that at the beginning of the slides that I showed tonight. They're creating impact markets in public health and health disparities in 20 countries at least. Logic dictates that data-driven, market-based social solutions can never put an end to poverty, but rather investors will manage services in ways that maximize returns while reducing the likelihood those trapped in the system will become sufficiently organized to overthrow it. Okay. And so for me, that's the key, is this last section, is that they're going to have well-managed poverty, and that is the plan of the Great Reset and the automation of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. But they need to keep people occupied so that they cannot organize and make a better plan. And that is what these pathways are for, that the 2-generation pathways and the welfare to work pathways. They're not expecting that in the future they're going to get people in gainful employment that is family supporting employment. No, that's going to the robots. That's going to the AI. But they need to keep everybody busy going through the motions as if someday they're going to get the job if they just get the next credential, if they just do the next health behavior. And so that is what all of these systems are.
And so many people are going to be compliant to that shit. That's what's scary.
Well, yeah. And the solutions offered are never meant to get you off the pathway, because as long as they've created an investment market in keeping people on the pathway, you're just going to put more and more people on the pathways. If that's how you make your money, what's going to happen. So a lot of what is coming with the home visit programs, which I think will be following up, because again, the Momnibus bill, they were talking about Medicaid, at least in the first 12 months, is they're going to be advancing these home visit programs. And the Nurse Family Partnership, which has been around for a very long time here, it says 40 years. So at least since the 70s, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But now they're weaponized with tablets and impact investing, right? So they're talking about the Nurse Family Partnership is now working with Pay for Success, a unique form of social innovation finance. Okay. And this first one was in South Carolina. And what I really want to emphasize is that,
why did they pick South Carolina, you think?
Well, so here's what I think. This stuff is racialized. I mean, where they're targeting one of the first UBI pilots was in Jackson, Mississippi, right? The wraparound service target was in the Harlem Children's Zone, right? They're doing this with intention. And South Carolina was a really brutal slave state, right? And there was a lot of resistance there. And you control people through their children.
Damn.
You threaten somebody's kids and they're going to be less likely to step out of line if you control their kids, if you control what happens to their kids, right? I'm not trying to be too dark about that, but when you hear about, people who escaped slavery, there were more men that made it out than women, because women had a lot of kids, right? And they wouldn't leave necessarily. They were less likely to be able to bring them all, right? So I just think that this history is really important. And I don't
That's why they're targeting women now. I mean, it's the same thing. Yeah. Damn. Sick bastards.
So, I mean, did I see that written anywhere? I didn't, but I think if you understand the history, it's hard to say that that's not what's happening.
Well, I got scared when anytime like Joe Biden talking about racial equity as a top thing, that I didn't think that was a good thing. I'm scared.
Yeah. So South Carolina was the model. All right. So South Carolina, Pay for Success, Nurse Family Partnership, but they're in every state now. And this slide here, gosh, I can never say it. Anthropos Capital. All right. We know that they're creating human capital bonds, and we know that they're targeting children, because the human capital bond program, you create the most profit the earlier you start. So really, that's
what's the date on this?
So this Anthropos was like 3 weeks ago.
Damn.
Okay. So the guy who's the co-chair of this was, I think, this co-chair CEO of Bridgewater Associates, which is Ray Dalio, Connecticut hedge fund, one of the largest asset managers in the world, behind BlackRock. Huge, right? And I had not heard of an SPAC before, but it's a special purpose acquisitions company. So it's just a company set up to buy stuff. And they also call it a blank check company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's based out of the Caymans.
Wow.
Right? So again, we're talking slavery and kids. And they can maximize the profit. Really, they can create impact markets pre-birth if you start tracking the mother's compliance. And then you just go from there. You just keep them on the pathway. You keep them always on the pathway. And this is a blog that I wrote about shorting the lives of children, because they created this documentary called No Small Matter, which was talking about investing in children. But it isn't. I mean, it's not that kind of, it's not investing in a nice way. It's investing in a not nice way.
Right.
So again, I just want to sort of re-emphasize that this is all based on data profiling. This has this history of, this is the future. This is from this Global Education Futures Forum map, where they're talking about the people there, that you will have fortunes made up of human capital. That's this billionaire class. that this is based on the history of the Zong massacre, where they took out insurance policies on enslaved people. And when they hit the doldrums in the Caribbean, they didn't have an insurance policy, didn't cover dehydration or starvation, but it did cover like sinking. So they threw people overboard. Okay, so that's to get their insurance payment. So that's the shorting part, right? And that's what really catalyzed the abolition movement in Great Britain, was the Zong massacre. And then we see this Internet of Bodies is the connectivity that is coming. And this is a RAND report. So, RAND does all of the defense contracting, work that they're talking about. The Internet of Bodies will change everything for better or worse. And they have a black man there on the.
Is RAND somebody's last name?
Oh gosh, I should know what RAND stands for. It's military contract R&D.
Okay.
It's like,
all right.
And so this is what's interesting. Let me go on to the next slide. So this report was actually the Internet of Bodies, Risks and Opportunities, again, because it's about insurance. The funder of the report on the Internet of Bodies was this person, Jacques Dubois, who became the head of Swiss Re Insurance. So the insurance companies are a central part of this. And I think that is why it's really important, the pharmaceutical and the insurance finance side, that it's coming out of New Jersey with Booker, like driving this thing. It's about the insurance and the risk analytics. So here I'm going to pivot a little bit. Again, it's related, I still think, to this Momnibus is, the vaccines, right? So we've been, they're the passports, the medical passports that I'm going to call it. This is an image that I took from a New York Times article from 2002. And it was really looking into the history of Oracle, the computer company Oracle. And they were the first ones to really develop interoperable data systems. Now, in 2002, the journalist who did this piece said, this is the last bit of the article, I had one last question for Larry Ellison, who's the founder of Oracle. In 20 years, do you think the global database is going to exist? And will it be run by Oracle? I ask. I do think it will exist. And I think it is going to be an Oracle database, and we are going to track everything. Okay. So we need to understand the medical passport system being connected to this apparatus. So 20 years from 2002, that's next year. Okay. So I wanted, okay. Oh, I think I got a tiny bit out of order. I do want to touch on this thing called the Altarum Institute. I came across this a couple of years ago, and I haven't written about it yet, but it was unusual. It's based in Michigan, and they have something that's backed by the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation called the Healthcare Value Hub, and payformance solutions about a value-based healthcare. Okay. And they also are a member of the National Coalition for Sexual Health. So these are the people who have been developing these innovative finance schemes that were in the Momnibus language there. They're talking about data analytics, digital tools, and innovative payment systems. So it's all coming out of Altarum. It's interesting. They did a webinar on social impact partnerships, pay for results. So that's pay for success, that's seed money. They did a special webinar about it in 2018. The Robert Woods Johnson Foundation is connected to that. Robert Woods Johnson with Bloomberg put unhoused people on blockchain in Austin. That's the MyPass program. And then You'll see down here, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation is connected with it as well. And Kellogg was doing the Universal Basic Income pilot with Black women in Jackson, Mississippi. Okay. Wow. So when you see this coming together, and then this Environmental Research Institute of Michigan, it's really interesting that this Altarum actually came out of this Environmental Research Institute, which itself emerged from the Willow Run Laboratory, which was a bomber fabrication installation for the military built by Ford. So during World War II, Ford built this giant plant to build bomber airplanes. And then it morphed into a research institute with, I think, the University of Michigan that was doing remote sensing with like radar stuff with airplanes. And so like, tell me how exactly it is that like becomes connected to your research institute for healthcare with vulnerable people.
Crazy. Wow.
right? I mean, to me, I'm like, okay. I mean, I often talk about signals intelligence, but that really feels pretty strongly signals intelligence-y, right? The other piece, and I'm just going to touch on some of these things because these are things I've come across in my research that I think relate, is the pre-K. So California, when Race to the Top happened, again, last global economic crash, right? And then they use that to leverage school districts and departments of education into data-driven approaches to managing children.
And it ain't fixed it yet.
I knew all of the stuff that was happening around K-12 education, but a similar thing was happening in pre-K in terms of data analytics and quality analytics. So the state of California has one of the largest systems of pre-K. I mean, I think they in Texas have the most children, and especially the largest number of low-income children. And so they were creating data analytics programs for their pre-K for the state of California, this early quality. It's called iPinwheel. And I found it really crazy that this gentleman, Mark Crandall, who developed this system, he was an agile chief agilist. You know, that's the software approach.
I don't know what an agilist is. What is that?
Well, so it's a kind of interoperable like software system. But before he took the job in 2012 to develop the pre-K quality analytics, he was working for the FBI Sentinel program with BAE.
Wow.
For a long time. So how does one like go from being like a contractor on FBI case management software and pivot into pre-K? I mean, to me, that's kind of
scary,
right? And this is what I wanted to mention. Like, it's kind of like this.
And these people put all this shit on their LinkedIn's, not thinking that people will like want to research.
I mean, clearly, I'm the only one looking.
That's crazy.
You know, I've come across this. I'm like, what? So this is iPinwheel. Like, so as a kid, this is what I mean by websites that don't make any sense. This is the website for the QRIS, the Quality Management System and the Student Information System for Early Childhood Education, for the facilities and the educators and the children. And this is like the crappiest looking, goofy website you'd ever want to see. How does this mesh up with this guy?
Yeah.
But it's a thing. And like, so when we're talking about Black and brown women, pregnancies, childcare, home visits, pre-K, this is the landscape that we are operating in. This is this landscape, and it's pretty intense. So this is Heckman. This is Jim Heckman. I've talked about him before in a lot of other talks. He's the one who developed the equation for early childhood interventions. So he's saying a 7 to 10% rate of return for early childhood investment. And that goes from home visits to pre-K all the way up to third grade test scores. That the screen back there says mothers and children first to promote social mobility. So that's these pathways. We're going to track you on your pathway for your social mobility. Here is Heckman. He is presenting on labor market returns for an early childhood stimulation intervention in Jamaica. Okay, so the guy gets around, but he's specifically talking about high quality home visit programs. He's at the Aspen Institute. This is where this image is, and he's with Jeff Bezos, his mother, Jackie. So, you know, Jeff Bezos has invested in these funds, both for
in early childhood and
Montessori pre-K.
Yep.
Right.
He started a school, didn't he?
Well, yeah, I mean, they've got millions of dollars they're pouring into Montessori pre-K, but it's all to get the data on the pre-K kids. So Heckman is the basis of this. Again, early childhood impact investing, innovative finance, you know, the pay for success is part of it.
And that's from 2014.
Yeah, I mean, it's been around. I mean, they've been working on this a good bit. You know, if you're going to create a security of human futures market on children, you've got to tag them, right? You've got to, it's like, you know, it's terrible. But if you think about industrial livestock management, right? You know, like, how are you going to know what the risk is of your kid? How are you going to risk profile them? How are you going to value them in this human capital portfolio? Well, you need to get them on blockchain, right? So the state of Illinois in 2018 was doing a whole task force on using blockchain for state government. And again, they're the futures market, the commodities futures trading, Chicago. But they partnered with Evernym to do birth certificate registration. So this is another thing that I'm thinking about in terms of the this Momnibus bill, right, is if you're doing Medicaid and you're offering services, people are going to have to do whatever you say, right? Like they're going to say, we're putting your baby on blockchain, right? I mean, I can foresee this happening, right? Like Medicaid gets set up with a blockchain electronic healthcare record and all the babies go on blockchain. And then once the babies are on blockchain and it's synced with maybe your blockchain medical record of your prenatal care, then the risk profiling starts, the human capital valuation starts. But I do think that they need to capture the human capital market. They need to capture the unborn children, and that the birth certificates on blockchain are going to be a key piece to that. This is another tricky thing that makes no sense unless you understand the bigger picture. So here, Phil Murphy is pitching baby bonds. This is something that
please let me. I hope this is not a bad thing, because are you familiar with the stratification economist Derek Hamilton?
No, you can tell me about it though.
He I hope he's not like, this is not some bad shit, but I actually first learned about baby bonds from him, and he used to be the executive director of the Kirwan Institute on Race and Ethnicity at Ohio State. Okay. Now he's back at the New School, and he's created his own like department, like whatever you call it, at the university, and he's like the chair and stuff like that. But the baby bond idea was something that he had proposed in like this 10-point plan to close the racial wealth gap.
But Zaki, it's $1,000.
Oh,
that's not very much.
I don't see that. Oh yeah, okay. Well, I don't think he put a number to it.
So what Murphy is proposing is $1,000, and look, we'll deposit $1,000 into their account for every baby, just one time, and that like somehow that compound interest is going to amount to something. You know, that I mean, I don't think that that's sufficient to close a gap.
No, that's not.
On this, and he works for Goldman Sachs, right? So, right. You know, I don't think he's coming at this because he feels like he wants to make things right. I mean, he's 27 years Goldman Sachs. So my take on at least this proposal is that $1,000 is not very much money for these jokers, right? Especially if they can set it up as an impact commodity or something. But if you set up an account, then you're going to be able to track that, right? There'll probably be some sign up system that you'll have to do to get in, right? So if there's the babies who may not get on the blockchain birth certificate, like this would be another way in, I can imagine, of kind of like the free college dual enrollment. Oh, we're going to have your transcript on blockchain. That's just how we do it now, right? And that this bond program would maybe be linked into your e-government benefits, right? Oh, this baby, let's set them all up with the benefits, and you'll have your Medicaid or whatever, that are linked in, and here's your baby bond allocation. Because I don't think $1,000 is going to, even over compound interest, going to amount to much, especially given that they're going to implode the national economy. Right. I don't know. I don't dispute that there's a gap, but I don't think that this guy here, that this program, I would guess, to me, it feels more like they're trying to track these people. And then maybe once you spend it, then they'll want to know how you spent it. I could be wrong. I would be happy to be wrong. So this is a crazy thing about, this is from Pierre Omidyar. So Pierre Omidyar's wife, Pam, was involved in the South Carolina Pay for Success home visit program with this app. Pierre Omidyar is of eBay. Again, so we're talking auctions. We're talking about auctioning human capital, kind of. Not exactly, but eBay is auctions, and he's definitely, and PayPal. And he's setting up, this is a report that's worth looking up, and maybe we can link to it when we put it out. It's called Big Ideas, Little Learners, and it's about investing in early childhood, but it's all about disruptive tech innovation. So here they're identifying, they're saying that in 24 states that 50% more babies are going to be born on Medicaid. And again, that's where you have the control, is if people are on Medicaid, you have to do exactly what is said. You don't get a whole lot of options. And I think it's going to be linked to the electronic health record. So that's why the Momnibus bill, like if they're giving 12 months of Medicaid access, these guys are in positions to take advantage of that. Okay, so now I'm popping back over to the vaccination records. Okay, so we talked about the vaccine credential. MITRE, that's another defense contractor. This is coming out of, and I told a friend that I would incorporate this in because I think it's relevant. Ocean County, California is seeing the rollout of an app called Othena, not Athena, Othena, and it's part of something called Composite Apps. Cure a Patient and Composite Apps. Okay, so Composite Apps is the company. They have a healthcare remote monitoring system called Cure a Patient. And then they developed software for Ocean County, which was probably intended to scale throughout California, that was scheduling for injections. So you would use this app to schedule and have follow-up for your COVID treatment. Okay. Composite Apps, the product developer, the head of partnerships, his name is Charles Rockefeller. So Charles Rockefeller is the son
He's
of
a
Jay
descendant.
Rockefeller.
I was about to say he's a
Jay
descendant.
Rockefeller of
Wow.
West Virginia and grandson of John D. Rockefeller III. Okay.
Wow.
He's also a trustee of the Asia Society. He actually is a Penn graduate, Penn education, with multiple certificates from Wharton in evidence-based decision-making. Okay. So we've got this Composite Apps and we've got Rockefellers. Composite Apps is partnering with a lot of data analytics companies, right? So we've got Salesforce, we've got SAP, we've got Apple, Microsoft, Amazon Web Services, Oracle, Workday, and Tibco. So they're partnering, and they also talk about doing work for the government, for defense, supply chain, and entertainment industries. So they're also in the defense sector. This is an attachment for the scope of work for this contract they were doing with Orange County, California. Orange County. So they're developing the scheduling apps, the tracking, educational content around the vaccines, a passporting system for local businesses, and at the end they say that they will provide public health analytics through this Cure a Patient software platform that they have developed. Cure a Patient will provide timely analytics to ensure that vaccines are available and ensure accessibility to individuals based on the priority matrix as outlined by the federal government. So we know that they're specifically focused on certain populations getting this under equity, right? But the last line here, it says, additionally, the efficacy of the vaccines can be further enhanced and better targeted to genotypes and socioeconomic environments.
That sounds like eugenics.
Well, it clearly seems like whatever data they're collecting includes a genomic component and a demographic component, and that they will be refining future things based on that, right? So, and we know that vaccines are part of this program. Okay, so also in the scope of work, in addition to all the things COVID related, they have something called the Gateway to a Healthier Orange County. Okay, so I'm just going to read this out loud. This last mile effort can be the perfect first step to having residents of Orange County sharpen their focus on their healthcare with integrations. Oh gosh, I covered that up. Like free integrations with medical systems, healthcare apps, Apple Help, Map My Ride, Strava, and health technologies like Fitbits, Peloton, insulin pumps, and smartwatches will provide a foundation for better wellness outcomes. This crisis can and should be the catalyst for positive change for the residents of Orange County. So again, this is where the preventative healthcare targeting Black and Brown communities is going to come in, right? The genotype and socioeconomic focus is for this gateway to this much larger program. Again, that's coming in connection with software companies that, again, like largely overlap. Many of them also hold defense contracts. So this is a bit of a jump. I mentioned that Charles Rockefeller was a trustee of the Asia Society. He talks about his father having very close ties to Japan. And I've mentioned before that if we're talking about that they want to capture these children, right, for financial markets, but also because these people actually imagine that the future is going to be cyborg. right? That they're going to train up these children to be accommodating of a cybernetic human-computer interface future. And this is from this moonshot project in Japan, the Japan Science and Technology Agency, where they're talking about by 2050, we will have augmented creatures, human animals and plants, and artificial ones with cyber-physical environments, right? They're turning people into like people and robots. So this whole Momnibus bill, if you imagine that they need to bring these children along into this world, right? They need to manage the pregnancies and the outlooks of these children all the way through from pre-birth through pre-K through education into accepting this future that is being planned out. And this future, in particular is coming out of Japan with SoftBank and the Nippon Telegraph and Telephone. And, here we have, direct connections with Charles Rockefeller. He's saying that, here his dad is Jay Rockefeller, who helped found the Asia Society. And that, he went to Japan as a child. He had very close connections to Japan. And so, and then Charles has followed in his footsteps. And he also has very close connections with Asia and is building this app for healthcare pathways. And then I think we just have to wonder if the healthcare pathways are into transhumanism. And clearly those of us who are have been around the block a few times or are on our 50s on up are probably not going to get with the cyborg program willingly. They are going to bring up these children into this future. And I think that the healthcare management program, both from managing the pregnancies to managing the mindsets of the families after birth, is really part of this larger social conditioning. I don't know if that seems like a stretch, but
do you feel like no, it's not a stretch. And I've been wondering because I've been really, well, I don't know. Let's keep going.
All right. Well, this is just Cure a Patient. This is part of Composite Apps. Again, Charles Rockefeller is the partnership coordinator. But it's AI. It's putting you on a plan. It's saying that providers will connect a patient to their care plan. So again, and I will point out that many of the large for-profit prison companies like Geo Group and CoreCivic have been pivoting into social work and continuum of care work. So when you hear the care plan, you should be thinking private prison system, private prison pivoting into social work, that they verbally enter the care plan into the patient's artificial intelligence, and then that the patients are remotely monitored as they track progress against their plan, and that the information is shared across providers for more connected care. So to me, that just reeks of e-carceration.
Yes, of course.
They're turning your body into a prison. If you do not do exactly what they say, they will know. The AI will know. You now have a minder. And as I can't remember if we mentioned this right before we started recording, but the digital twinning, that they are using healthcare data to initially develop these digital twins. And this is in the EU, the DigiTwin program. So the cybernetic part of it is nanotechnology and cybernetics in your physical body system, but then transmitting data to actually create a parallel universe. You can see the real individual and the digital version in this parallel universe. And I think increasingly the blockchain electronic healthcare records will be the interface between all the data that is collected on you in healthcare settings, but other settings to sort of scribe in virtual space your digital twin. So this image is from the RAND report about the Internet of Bodies, the risks and opportunities. And I want to point out, so there's, an athletic Black woman there, and I will read these in case people can't see them. So she's fitted up with her smart technology. So she has a tooth-mounted sensor. She has a meditation. She has I think it's for that you hear things in your head. They can project things they've already got this. I think some of the hearing aid things and spy things are connected to that. They they resonate through your jaw, your tooth. Interconnected glasses. So those are these augmented reality glasses. An intraocular lens with a camera. So I guess you could take cameras, pictures with your eyeballs. I don't know. A meditation headset. A Bluetooth hearing aid. I guess you get bionic hearing. You've got your typical smartwatch fitness tracker, a temperature bracelet, because we're going to have our temperature all the time, an artificial pancreas, and temperature monitoring clothing, an electronic pill, and a fertility measurement device.
So they're going to control the fertility of women.
Yeah, that's what it sure looks like to me. And then you've got a baby over here with
Black women. Yeah, they've been trying to control the fertility of Black and brown women.
Yep. This is the next step. This is the Internet of Bodies version. And then you have babies where you're connecting their diaper to Bluetooth, wearable monitors, sleep tracking in their shirt, and temperature sensing pacifiers.
I can't imagine that. So there is going to be a group of people that's going to lie down and think that this is a good thing. But I can't imagine those of us who are like, you know, we know history. We don't generally trust people like this, especially when you say you got FBI and defense contractors and military contractors involved in this. It seems like they're doing this very slowly and like sort of without informed consent. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think for the most part, it will be presented that if you need assistance, if you're on Medicaid, if you're getting SNAP, here you go. And we'll know if you don't put that wearable monitor on your baby. And it's all in a blockchain wallet. So you don't, you know, if you're non-compliant, they just cut it off. And cut off your access.
That's why I think there has to be advocacy on not getting rid of cash. There's a move to become like cashless so that it's more control.
Yeah, definitely. So just walking through, but like this is a lot. And you can see this Cure a Patient with the Tanzania, you know, remembering back about like, oh, track the compliance. Here you're on your pathway. We'll give you a token for an umbrella. Like that's exactly what this type of system is set up for. And again, Charles Rockefeller, he's just not somebody who walked up off the sidewalk and got a degree from Stanford and is doing this. This is a very well-connected person with a very extensive back history. These relationships with all of the top technology companies that are interfacing with this app, this platform, and they're targeting, Orange County, which it's interesting because the person I spoke with was sort of saying that it's actually a pretty conservative county for California. And so what they felt like is if they could get them to accept it in a conservative county in California, that would sort of be the bipartisan acknowledgement that it was okay. Like this would be their test case. If they could get it by the conservatives, then that would be like a thumbs up that this was going to be pretty easy to get going. But nobody's even really looking at the contracts, and nobody really is looking closely to question the powers, with the power operators who are in this space, right? But so the Cure a Patient platform, you onboard them, but they're talking about like even within, signing up for your appointment to get your injection or whatever, that you have a virtual caretaker, right? And this is a huge actual market on the other end, not young mothers, but the elderly, like that you're going to have your AI personal minder in this. And so the surveillance element is really huge, connected to the finance again. And I'm going to see if I can run this video. It's just 2.5 minutes. So
please.
This is a short video that I think encapsulates a lot of what I'm talking about with the Internet of Bodies, with smart environments and smart contracts. The context is maybe not exactly right for Momnibus, but I think people can extrapolate. In this case, it is a family is put onto pathways because someone in their household has been incarcerated. And so the framing is that the person returning from being incarcerated will do better on their pathway if their wife and child also are on healthcare pathways. So, but I think the idea of being on a pathway would be applicable to the Momnibus bill, particularly if, I think that there are actually elements in the Momnibus bill about people who are incarcerated and veterans and other things. So, picture this is Kathy, your community care coordinator, and you might imagine Kathy working for Geo Group or Core Civic, and I'm sure Kathy herself is a lovely person, right? Like she thought she was going into social work to help people get better, but instead she's just managing them on care pathways.
Wow.
Meet Kathy. Kathy is a community care coordinator employed by a local nonprofit. Kathy's organization is part of the Better Health Together Pathfinder Community Hub, which makes her part of a regional network of community-based care coordinators committed to providing standardized, whole-person care to people at risk. The hub receives referrals for families and individuals needing support services and pairs them with community-based coordinators like Kathy. Kathy has been helping Joe navigate and access services since he was released from jail. Because Joe will be more likely to succeed if he knows his family is healthy and supported, Kathy will be working with his daughter Sarah and her mother Amy too. Kathy begins by going to their house to start a comprehensive risk assessment that will identify what services Amy and Sarah may benefit from. For each risk, Kathy assigns a pathway, a standard, evidence-based care coordination plan designed to remove barriers to good health. Each pathway is tied to specific outcomes, and Kathy will provide support, accountability, and encouragement to Sarah and Amy to see those outcomes are met and each pathway completed. Kathy learns Sarah has been missing school because of her severe asthma, which has sent her to the ER multiple times. She assigns a medical home pathway to find a regular primary care provider for Sarah and a medication management pathway to verify Sarah is taking her asthma medication as prescribed. Kathy assigns Amy an education pathway to present some information about her tobacco smoking, which might be affecting her daughter's asthma. They talk about available support to help her quit, and Kathy assigns a smoking cessation pathway. Kathy will make regular home visits to check in on Sarah and Amy's progress and can help schedule appointments and arrange transportation. For every pathway Kathy's clients complete, such as when Sarah attends her primary care appointment or when Amy quits smoking, Kathy or her organization will receive an incentive payment rewarding her for those outcomes. In addition to her pathways, Kathy will access the Hub's up-to-date resource portal to find community connections that will support her patient's health. Because Kathy tracks every step of this process in the Pathfinder Care Management System, all of Sarah and Amy's providers can access and share real-time data on their clients. This data helps Better Health Together manage quality, identify gaps in service, and increase the likelihood of success for our community. The Pathfinder Community Hub gets the whole region working together for better health.
Control, control, control. No privacy.
Yep. Yeah,
Absolutely
and
ridiculous.
well, and you can see like when there's these incentive payments, right? And everybody gets put on a pathway. And so I can see that there would be pathways. They come into your home and they say, oh, we've risk assessed you. Like we've identified all of, so again, it's a deficit model. They're coming in looking for fixable items because when they can tell you what to do. And again, they want to keep people busy so that you're jumping through the hoops so that you can't say this whole situation is really messed up. You know, we should do something else. Why are we jumping through hoops for things that are never going to get better for us? You know, I've mentioned, you know, I work in a part of the city that has terrible air quality, right? We're by the refineries and trash incinerators. And like no one's coming in and saying that they're going to clean up the air so that the little girl can breathe better. They're just going to make sure that she takes her asthma medication. So, you know, it's not going to fix the structural problem. So, so the tokens, just getting back to the token piece, if we're thinking about the umbrella token, that these pathways are smart contracts, outcomes-based funding is being linked to social impact bonds and this value-based healthcare. They're linking money for healthcare payment to programmable money on blockchain. Okay, and this is being done in Australia. So you can see this is a diagram, indicative example of enabling value-based healthcare, where they've got, you've got the individual, they have a wallet, their issues are like high blood sugar or high blood pressure. Their solution is wearable technology, and then only once the data analytics are verified will the service provider get paid. And so again, this is mining people for data. And this is kind of a terrifying picture, I mean, it's like a white woman jogging, but it's a World Economic Forum, and they're talking about personal data as a new asset class. Like really your currency is your data and your behavior. And this woman is jogging, and it's like she's just throwing off all of this data behind her. But you can imagine what that looks like in the healthcare system, and particularly for women that might have more complicated pregnancies. Wow. And if they link the healthcare payment data on blockchain to things like food stamps. And I think I've shown this to you guys before, but this is the state of Illinois, their blockchain task force pilot. They haven't actually done this yet. It was more of a thought process, but how could they manage people's SNAP access in a digital wallet so that they would incentivize quote unquote healthy behaviors in terms of food purchases by incentivizing buying the apple versus the hamburger. But again, this whole structure is predicated on the fact that people have access to affordable, healthy food, have stable housing, have access to a kitchen to cook. I mean, all of these things which are not guaranteed. But you could see very much how this idea of managed food access would feed into a digital tool that they might use to control pregnant women, right? To ensure good health, they would track all of their food accessing points. Wow. Again, the programming, this is the Kellogg Foundation in Jackson. You know, they talk about no strings attached. It's going to be a bait and switch. This universal basic income, which is still only like $1,000 a month. It
ain't shit. I keep telling people that.
There's not enough money. You can't live off of $1,000. And even though they're protesting that it's no strings attached, it's clear from everything that these folks are saying behind the scenes that the plan is to make this programmable money, like to tie this into either central banking digital currency or to create digital script that an investor will invest in you and your future prospects and give you programmable money that you can, you have available. But again, control of people through the programmable digital assets is central. So this is getting back to the Nurse Family Partnership Program in South Carolina, which is the model home visit program tied to pregnancy and pregnancy behaviors. Hope Lab is Pam Omidyar's sort of behavioral, neurobehavioral, digital compliance company. And so she develops apps that track medical compliance. And so this Hope Lab was a central feature of with the Nurse Family Partnership, and they had something called Goal Mama. And I remember, Zakia, I mean, I will tell you, I showed up at an event at University of Pennsylvania a couple years ago where they were talking about, it was these two brothers, and I think they were totally connected to eugenics. One was connected to Rockefeller University, and one was a professor at Bowdoin, which is where Stanley Druckenmiller was, and they were brothers, and they were talking about working with the United Way and epigenetic trauma, really, which is a thing, right? It is a real thing, but I was talking with them about leveraging this for human capital finance and collective impact, and that it was wrong. And afterwards, these, well-heeled professors, with the wine and cheese, saying, well, you're not solving poverty with a nudge. You're not solving, that you're not well, and they're like, well, I don't know about that. And they're sitting there with the wine and cheese. I'm like, you're not solving poverty with a nudge. You're not solving wealth, huge imbalances of wealth and power in this world with an app. But these people clearly are trying to force people onto apps. So that's what the Goal Mama is. It's you're interacting with, proactive pregnancy behavior, on this content. And at this point, it's voluntary and it's connected to social networking. But at what point, what analytics are pulled out of that? And we know that everything is going towards a social credit scoring system. Does it go from being voluntary to being required? And that there would be high stakes outcomes attached to what that data is in terms of how you interacted with your Goal Mama app. So again, this is Hope Lab. So it's combining tech and social psychology. Pam Omidyar and her husband Pierre, he's doing the digital identity, the global digital identity, and he's very deeply involved in educational technology. And then her side of things is the healthcare compliance app. And I'm just putting this up. This is actually an Indigenous woman in Canada, but talking about the high stakes nature of this is that what happens if your score on your Goal Mama app isn't high enough? Are they going to put you as a risk of, and not allow you to take keep your baby, and that's, I think these are the ethical questions that we have to be proposing at this point, is when you're putting, women under digital surveillance, especially around their pregnancies and tracking their families and their information and tying it to financial markets, especially when foster care, and we know Annie Casey Foundation is like embedded in the foster care system, there's a lot of questions. I think clearly we have a lot of questions, and we shouldn't just accept on face value that everybody's intentions are good in this game. And I'm getting towards the end. This is Lena. This was actually developed, I think, out of the University of Chicago medical system, but has ties also to Texas. And this is all framed as a talk pedometer, right? And that they have these, it's actually a device. This is an older child, but they talk about having a onesie that they slip this device in the onesie to listen to how you talk to your child, if you're talking to them correctly. And it's like, it counts the number of words that you say. And I think eventually even the level of sophistication of the talk. And then here they're tracking this mother reading with this child, which clearly we want moms to be able to read with kids, right? Like, that's lovely. Do you want a surveillance device in your home tracking how you read, like how often and what times of day? And no, you don't want that. But that is what Lena is doing. And this is all
people have been conditioned by the Amazon, what is it called? The thing
Alexa?
In the house? Alexa, yeah. So it's like people, they're already conditioned with that. So they're probably like, oh, well, this is to help with kids. This is like a good thing.
And that's assuming you think that these systems are meant to help. And clearly we wouldn't be at this point in social wreckage and dispossession and brutality if things were actually working, right? Like, so why would we think more of this is going to make it better?
Right.
I mean, I'm not buying it. So
right.
Again, this is just, again, touching on this 2-generation. The Momnibus bill is both, they're not going to stop once that baby is born or once the 12 months points hits. Like, they're going to be in those people's business for the pathway. You're on the pathway, right? And they've got two. They've got the moms on one pathway and they've got the children on the other pathway, and they're making bank on both sides. So Aspen Institute is part of this, Casey Foundation, all the impact investors need. And part of this is this Blue Meridian group with Stanley Druckenmiller and a lot of big, Steve Ballmer, who's connected with Strive together. They want you on the pathway. So they're going to get you on by tracking pregnancies and then sticking with you throughout, is my sense. And this is, again, just more about the great families, United Way data collection systems. Again, we know the United Way, that's about Alison and managing the working poor, and the shared data analytics with measurable results. Again, just touching base, Harris is all in on this, maternal health crisis. But again, she was focused on, putting women in prison around truancy. And this woman, Cherie Peoples, like, her daughter was actually hospitalized at the time that she was put in prison because her daughter was in school because her child was in the hospital. So, like, there's a disingenuous aspect of this that they're actually caring about women now when there wasn't a lot of care about their family. Or if the care they think they're giving is that they can police your parenting and throw you in jail, like, then we should question that as well. And she was involved in Back on Track Los Angeles, which was anti-recidivism impact investing. So she's out of the Bay Area. Those are her people. She knows all about impact investing and the human capital finance piece. And this is coming, like, so 2-generation Cap Tulsa. This is this 2-generation. Although actually this is in Tennessee, but they're working on, like, when we talk about control of reproduction of incarcerated women, which were disproportionately.
Yes, the forced sterilizations. Yeah.
Yep. So, like, saying, oh, we'll cut your jail time if you will be, take this, implantable birth control device. And, again, like, if your score is not good enough, at what point do they just turn you off? Right. And this is Bill Gates and MIT working on remote control birth control. So at what point does the Momnibus tracking of health analytics just say, you know what, we can't help you. We've decided you're too risky. Maybe you just shouldn't be a parent, or at least not for now, or until you get clean, or until you do finish this level of your pathway. Maybe you can level up and try to, be a parent in a few years. So that's sort of my last my last slide, but I know it's heavy, but I think unless you see like who's being represented, who is Booker representing, who is Harris representing here, is it
Right.
there are really powerful forces behind this, and
Clearly.
if people don't interrogate that on the way in and put in guardrails, I don't see how it's not gonna go that way.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the whole controlling of the reproduction is key here because with everything being automated, more automated and AI, then they don't need as many like regular, normal human beings.
Yeah. Well, and I'm increasingly, I mean, I don't have proof of this, but I do feel like that there is, I don't know, and I don't want to, but like a connection of Black women, Indigenous women, like to these energetic systems, this groundedness, that there's something like they have been doing bioprospecting, biopiracy in communities for a long time. And they haven't had nearly the sophisticated levels of tools that they have today in terms of like gene sequencing and all of these other things. And if, I do wonder if this larger mechanical apparatus, to me, it feels like, I mean, and that's, when you look at like Marimba Ni and those connections, if they're trying to get in and turn that off, and they've clearly been killing and erasing and, Black and brown women for centuries, but is this next generation, is this control of reproduction, control of genomics, through various aspects of your environment, your food, these devices, these wearables, going to be this next phase? And I don't know, but I think it's worth thinking about because I don't trust it.
I don't either. No, I don't understand how. I mean, I do see how people who are unassuming, like sort of, especially if it's like connected to their benefits, like, well, damn, I have to do this if I want my, subsidy or whatever. Yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit offline because I have a lot of questions about stuff that's just been like popping up. And maybe, we can kind of check in offline.
Yeah.
But this was great. I hope people share this out. I hope people, I mean, like it's all there. Like you're not just like not talking. I mean, it's not like you're talking about this stuff and not literally putting in a lot of time to research and provide proof for people.
There's a lot of money being developed in healthcare analytics. And if you are going to try to experiment on this telehealth stuff, it's not surprising that you would target Black women first.
But yeah, I'm sure they're targeting Native women as well.
Yeah, Indigenous women and Black women, yeah. Well, thank you for your time. I know it's been a hard, heavy week. So
definitely. Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, there's no need to be an ostrich. Like, I mean, I know for some people that's like their defense mechanism is like to just bury themselves and it doesn't, you know what I mean? So it is a lot though. It's heavy. This is heavy stuff.
So, well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, no, thank you, Alison. You're always, welcome back here because I want to make sure that I get this information out to the people in my community who actually want it. And there were actually I didn't post a lot of the comments because I wanted people to be able to see the full screen, but there was a lot of like, good comments and people understanding what you're talking about. Like, you know what I mean?
If single payer comes with a reproductive control monitor for Black women, like we might want to rethink that. I mean, and that's the thing, like, this is not my specialty. Like, I just know this apparatus. And so I
just know about the finance part. Yeah.
And I'm just like, why are people who are working in the healthcare space not talking about like in detail the blockchain electronic health records and the value-based payment and internet of bodies? Because to me, once you add in human capital finance and potentially state intelligence, Defense Department interest, risk profiling with the finance, I mean, to me, it seems like a no-brainer that the people who've been harmed by these systems for so long are being teed up again.
Right. Wow.
But hopefully we can wake people up.
Yeah, I hope so. That's the like that's a huge part of it. Is like the first step is like just get the information out there. And I feel like you said on a couple of occasions, like the universe will just connect the right people. Like it's not about like forcing people, but it's here if
You
you
can
want to
hear it.
listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, women need access, but we also need to consider the birth process. It's not a full on medicalization thing. And, like some people need that, but not all, like there need to be intentions around. It's a beautiful natural process. So what are they? It's going to be remade into something that is not going to suit the natural process. Clearly.
I mean, I think that's the goal. The other thing is like it reminds me that, for the longest time, there was a financial incentive during the birthing process to do C-sections on women because the doctor and everybody got paid a lot more money for doing C-sections instead of natural birth. And that actually increased the likelihood for Black women dying. And even the babies not making it a year. So even infant mortality, and it's all just so sick.
This is actually really, just in closing. So Heckman, who had the Heckman equation, so he did a conference about social emotional learning, which is terrifying, but he also hosted a conference on the microbiome. Okay. And this is something I talked a little bit about with Tom Cowan earlier this week, but that this understanding of the complexity that a lot of you isn't actually you. It's like you're a universe, a constellation of all of this stuff. And like in the natural birthing process, as the child comes through the birth canal, they become inoculated, like with all of your microbiome. That is a big part of that process. Their health, their immunity is built up through that natural process, which is then short circuited through cesarean.
The C-section, yep.
Right, like they don't get that. But he's actually setting up the microbiome as a social determinants of health impact sector. Wow. And DuPont is getting into the microbiome space. DuPont. So you can imagine they'll say, well, let me give you a C-section, but here, let me DuPont set you up with some like nutraceuticals to take care of your missing microbiome. No. It's crazy. Let's not do that. Okay.
Yeah, let's not do that. Have you been able to talk to any legislators, like get actually any meetings with them to see?
They don't want to talk. I haven't tried much, but I mean, I don't know. Who would I talk to?
Well, like the ones who are like introducing this shit. Like, do you actually understand like what you're? I mean, I guess there's a part of me that wants to believe that there are like literally some ignorant people like who actually believe this shit, like who believe this, you know what I mean? Like the story of this is gonna be helpful and it's this is gonna be a leg up and all this shit, because I think people are attracted to that kind of like language.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, like, their whole campaign, they were running like, racial equity is gonna be a big part of our administration. And I'm just like, really?
Kind, yeah. Yeah. I mean, if their job depends on them not knowing it, they're not going to know it. Like, I mean, the thing is, I don't know. And I'm also not the one to necessarily on this particular bill, like represent that, because that's not my, I'm not a Black woman. Like, so if I'm coming in, like, I think I can share this intelligence. That's kind of the position I feel comfortable in, is like, hey, I have this deep background and this is how this issue seems to fit in with this. And let me, lay out these information, these connections. Then people can hopefully synthesize some of that and then bring that into the community, because I think I'm better at the intelligence briefing. I can't tell people what they should necessarily do about it.
Sure.
But if anybody wanted to set something up and pop me in on a Zoom call, to me, what it feels like is most critical is for elected officials who are representing Black and brown communities to understand human capital finance, whether that is human capital finance around pregnancy, around incarceration, around housing, around autism, around because almost every single thing is connected in with that. And the past harm is going to be, is a key element. The trauma is part of what makes that market work. You know what I mean? And so if more legislators were willing to engage with that, I think we could get somewhere, because once you get that lens, you can look more critically at things and say, oh, well, what is the data being collected? What is the profiling element? Is there an incentive to actually fix the problem or just continue the problem?
Right.
Once you connect it in with global capital, then we might get somewhere. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, as always, Alison, this is
Okay.
always great, and definitely, want to have you back anytime. You have information that you can share. Just so for the viewers, I'll be back tomorrow night for a special segment at 8 p.m. Eastern here. So hopefully you guys that are watching will come back and join us. But in the meantime, you all have a good evening, and thanks for watching. Take care, everybody.